Donald Trump's Epstein nightmare is about to return in full force as both Democratic and Republican lawmakers are announcing a quote explosive press conference about Epstein that will put further pressure on Trump and the Republican congressional majority to release the Epstein Files. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, folks, here is Democratic Congressman Khanna announcing this, again, explosive press conference to be held later this week.
Of transparency, let's talk about the dispute related to the files of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Congress left town early without voting on your bipartisan bill, which would basically call for the release of all of the files related to Jeffrey Epstein. Do you think when Congress is back, the bill will go to the floor and it will pass?
I'm very confident it will. I spoke to Congressman Massey. You had us both on a few weeks ago. We will have the petition live on September 2nd. We have all 212 Democrats committed to signing it. He has 12 Republicans. Only 6 of them have to sign it. What will be explosive is the September 3rd press conference that both of us are having with 10 Epstein victims, many who have never spoken out before. They're going to be on the steps of the Capitol. They will be telling their story, and they will be saying clearly to the American public that they want the release of the Epstein Files for full closure on this matter.
That's going to be a total nightmare for Trump and the Republican Party because the Epstein issue, even though it was relatively low salience, was penetrative and it endured. It stuck to Trump. Right now, we haven't heard much about it in recent weeks, but that's because there's just been little by way of update. But this issue was giving him headaches. We covered it extensively over the past several months. And what Republican Speaker Mike Johnson and Trump were hoping is that the early recess of Congress would effectively put this to bed. But according to Khanna, and we're about to play another clip of him being interviewed by Fox News of all places, is like, no, this hasn't gone anywhere. They tried to delay this, but we're patient. We're biding our time. Not only will we push forth this legislation that Mike Johnson cannot stop, we will also make sure that there's a public spectacle in the form of a public press conference involving Epstein's own victims, putting pressure on Trump. Here's another clip.
12 Democrats and 12 Republicans, including Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert. Look, this is not about Donald Trump, and it's not partisan. This is about justice for the victims of rich and powerful men who abused underage girls. And 10 of these victims are speaking out for the first time at a press conference that Massey and I are organizing on the steps of the Capitol on September 3rd. In this country, people want transparency. They want accountability. I'm confident we're going to get the 218 votes for the discharge petition.
And talk about that news conference, because you're kind of touting.
I'll stop right there. We'll go back to the discharge, or we'll play the part about the press conference in just a second. But again, the discharge petition, the way it works is, so unfortunately, in our Congress, even when a plurality or even a majority of people want to bring forth legislation, the congressional leaders actually have enormous control over that. So the Republican Speaker of the House in the House of Representatives and the Senate leader in the Senate. Now, what a discharge petition does is effectively allows people to bypass that. Like, hey, listen, if you have the numbers of support for this legislation, you can effectively bypass the bottleneck that is the leadership that doesn't want you to be able to bring this legislation forth. That's what a discharge petition is. Now, because Democrats are in the minority, they would need Republican support for it. Apparently, they only need 6 Republican lawmakers. They have 12 who have at least declared that they are willing to sign up. So it looks increasingly likely that this is going to totally screw Mike Johnson and that he won't be able to effectively prevent this. If those 6 Republicans co-sign for this discharge petition for the public release of the Epstein Files, Johnson and Trump are screwed.
Petition.
And talk about that news conference, because you're kind of touting it, that it's going to be, if not explosive, there's going to be some news made.
Well, these victims haven't spoken for decades. When Epstein got that lenient plea deal, no one talked to the victims or their lawyers. No one talked to the victims or their lawyers when Maxwell was sentenced. No one has ever heard, what do they want? And my belief is when the American people actually hear the victims for the first time, they are going to sympathize, their hearts are going to be broken, and all the victims are saying is for closure, we need the Epstein Files released. That there are a lot of other rich, powerful men, politicians, business leaders who have committed abuse and who have not been held accountable. That's what we're going to hear on September 3rd, and people are going to be outraged, and I don't see how after that the House can't vote for the release of these files.
Again, that's Trump's worst friggin' nightmare. So let's take a look at a Politico article about this. Khanna and Massey to hold press conference with Epstein victims. When Congress is back in session this week, Representatives Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey are once again ready to push House Speaker Mike Johnson and the White House for transparency in the Jeffrey Epstein case. The next step, a Wednesday press conference with 10 of Epstein's victims. And again, they quote what Khanna said during the interview he had. Outcry over the White House's handling of the Epstein case engulfed the administration early in the summer after the FBI and DOJ announced that they uncovered no evidence of a so-called client list and were effectively closing any investigation, angering the MAGA allies who were counting on more information about the disgraced financier and his connections to society's upper crust. Some of them, from Laura Loomer to Liz Wheeler, called for Attorney General Pam Bondi to lose her job. Trump didn't help matters, aggravating supporters last month by calling the Epstein case a Democratic hoax and disavowing the, quote, past supporters who he said, quote, bought into this bullshit hook, line, and sinker. In search of answers, Khanna and Massey introduced a discharge petition that would force Bondi to release a broad range of DOJ files on Epstein. The pair is determined to press on even as the Justice Department transmits certain files over to the House Oversight Committee pursuant to an August subpoena. Khanna told Welker that he is confident that the bill has the numbers to reach the finish line on the House floor, which again we discussed. Here's a Fox News article to that effect. Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey are reigniting their push for the Justice Department to release the files. Let's see if there's any new information here. The White House's handling of the Epstein case sparked outcry earlier this summer. The move infuriated many of Trump's MAGA allies and supporters. I'm confident we're going to get the 218 votes for the discharge petition. We've got about 212 Democrats and 12 Republicans. He emphasized, quote, in this country, people want transparency. They want accountability. Yeah, so folks, I'm telling you, this is not good. If Ro Khanna, and by the way, Thomas Massey has made it, I guess, part of his identity to be a giant pain in the ass for Donald Trump. Now, he is from Kentucky. And he and Rand Paul are almost two birds of a feather because they're both from Kentucky. Rand Paul's in the Senate. Massey is in the House. And they're both like libertarian leaning Republicans. And they, as far as Republicans are concerned, are probably the two most consistently principled Republican lawmakers, which is very rare to find, really among any lawmakers, but particularly in the Republican Party, by far the least principled and least consistent of the two political parties. And because of Donald Trump repeatedly and increasingly attacking Thomas Massey's leaning into it, smiling, trolling, mocking Trump, and almost like leaning into this idea that he will be even more politically successful, Massey that is, if he leans into this idea of being a principled libertarian foil to Trump, that anytime Trump fucks up in a way that violates Massey's libertarian principles, he's going to be on Trump, doing everything in his power to needle and mock and try to politically screw him over. I mean, most Republicans recognize this is a political vulnerability for Trump, even if he's not directly implicated in crimes related to Jeffrey Epstein. But this is still bad because, of course, Epstein and Trump were friends for years. We also know some other things, too. Number one, Trump was told in May by the Justice Department that his name was all over the Epstein files. And then, of course, after that was when the FBI and the DOJ said, okay, we're done talking about the Epstein files. We're done investigating. So that was after they knew that Trump was in the Epstein files, and after they told Trump he was in the Epstein files, then came that order. We also know that the FBI, as they were reviewing the Epstein files, were flagging Trump's name for reference specifically. Trump's mentioned here. Then we learned that the FBI redacted Trump's name in the Epstein files, redacting it, trying to conceal it from further view. The polling on this issue is brutal. I mean, their poll after poll after poll shows that not only is Trump participating in a cover-up, not only has Trump mishandled the Epstein debacle, multiple polls say that a majority of Americans believe that Trump himself is either directly implicated in Epstein's crimes or that he had knowledge of Epstein's crimes before Epstein was ever investigated or prosecuted in the first place. So that's terrible. That is terrible PR for Donald Trump. And this is only going to reignite the flame. And everyone, all of us, just on the objective merits of the case, but also the fact that it's politically inconvenient for Trump, need to make sure that we keep talking about it and drawing attention to it as this becomes back into the spotlight as Khanna and Massey prepare for their September 3rd press conference. So we'll definitely be tracking it. And in the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.